What are you prepared to lose today? For free and confident. Oh, yeah. Working. Kind of working. That's what we want. Oh. Whoa. Okie dokie. Why is this working? Oh. Alrighty. Royal Randwick, what was it? Surround Stakes Day, whatever you want to call it. Guy Walter, Chipping Norton Stakes Day, either way. Weird day. Obviously, the inside was very scary, and it was weird that no one kind of worked it out. There were a few track reports that said the inside was going to be that way, that the sort of inside 4 or 5 sections were a little bit slower than the outside. So it was strange, number one, that no one seemed to know it in the first race at least. They jerried to it really quick, but I'll never get answers on why that was the case with what looked perfect weather leading up, and I think it was 0.1 of a mil. So we battle on. The track itself, it looks like it was sort of in the 4 to 5 range. Certainly that the longer events look like they, 1,400 metres plus, it was softish times, and the shorter, shoot and 1,400 metre races seemed like they were a little bit drier. So the further they went, the windier, maybe because it was the wind, but anyway, the track was certainly on the 5 side of a 4, which is where it ended up. They downgraded it after race 4. Whew. Sorry, been a long day. Race 1, midway, 1,100 metres.
Light is on, we're ready to go. Stand by. Racing, and Marshall Music left really well off the inside. It looks as though Chad Schofield wants to try and lead. Vindication's landed out well.
So nothing strange really happened at the start. Everyone kind of thought that Marshall Music was probably the likely leader. If anything, this horse, Artful Persuasion, might put a bit of pressure on it. As I said, it's sort of strange that Marshall Music stays to the inside. It did pull up 1 out of 5 lane too. Tempo-wise, all the races were run pretty slow. This is one of the more evenly run races. Time is okay. And speed, as said, sort of slightly softish tempo, but overall time pretty good.
The filly Artful Persuasion is going forward. Together with Beep Test is there, although it snags back. Then came Adios Steve. Further back to Mad Darcy, midfield, and the red cap on the inside of Everyone's a Star. Rebel Dean's caught out pretty deep, followed by Super Bright. Then came
to this point, not a lot happens. Mad Darcy back here. The place getters are all in the sort of the back half of the field. There's no real excuses for the stalkers, so the tempo is pretty solid. The winners had its own way, a little bit keen. He said pulled up 1 out of 5 lane and probably the worst part in the straight. So it's really the only forgive of the on-pace horses, I would have thought. Rebel Dean got a little bit keen as it was dragged back through the field. I think it needs to drop back in distance. Mad Darcy slicing through. So, yeah, as it turns out, in the run, stayed off the inside, which was important, and then got to the right part. So all these horses kind of in this running line here are the ones that ended up in the right part of the track. Super Bright back towards the inside. Was not in the best ground, but gets off the inside in the straight.
Rebel Dean getting to the outside. Mad Darcy's in traffic as Martial Music shows a good kick. Opened up by 3 lengths.
So yeah, as you said, like Martial Music had its way in front, but in the worst part of the track and worst part in the straight, probably the one of the few horses that stayed in that ground all day. So a forgivable effort for Martial Music. I think it needs to be ridden. Sorry, but it needs that little freshen. It's a horse that seems to race well fresh.
Down the middle, on the outside, Angel Fun, but Mad Darcy got the brakes at the right time, and Mad Darcy beat
solid enough efforts 1, 2, and 3 who had its chance in the run. It was sort of in that running line too, a little bit keen, but Everyone's a Star. Mad Darcy, what's it called? Stablemate of Angel Fund. Feel Weary follows Angel Throne. So it's all these horses in this sort of one-off running line are the ones that run on. Extreme Cat was not a bad effort. Ridden Stone Cold came down the outside. Getting against the softish tempo. So this form should marry up okay in midway grade. It seems to be its own sort of being, midway grade. Very, very sort of restricted grade that doesn't really travel to benchmark races unless you're very careful. You know, you sort of either find a horse that's on the up, otherwise this form sort of stays in its own little bubble, midway form. Yeah, not a lot to report there, really. Feel Weary, Mad Darcy, Angel Fund. The Extreme Cat I'm not completely sold on yet, but all going well enough to win races in this sort of grade. Everyone's a Star, same sort of thing. I think back to 1,000 is probably ideal for it. Moonlight Grace returned with a decent enough effort, and Super Bright won a midweeker before this and put in a similar effort. It just needs a lot to go its way, but no real knock on any of those horses. They've all gone okay and can measure up in similar grade. Test something. Race 2. Oops. Race 2, benchmark 88, 1,200 metres. This was an interesting race because I think they went into panic stations out Cobra Sun when they saw the fence was a bit compromised, potentially in race 1. Looked like they were kicking up a bit of mess, which is not what our Kobe Sun, who looks like a really dry tracker, wanted to see. I don't think they wanted to lead. Looks like they sort of went fast early here when they certainly weren't. They were going slow to the 800, quickened it up a little bit from the 800, and then absolutely zoomed home from that point, from the last 600 winners run home in very slick sections from a really nice position. Second horse has gone okay. Tin Tookie was probably in trouble after the start. Thought its effort's pretty good, but we'll see what I'm talking about.
Gate 1, set, although there's a few calls from inside. Now we're ready. Now Kobe Sun. Now we're ready.
Race 2, so Tin Tookie in a bit of trouble as soon as it bounced up in the air and went back at the start. Gets a little bit keen, sort of forced back to the inside as it unfolds. I was hoping that Tashi would stay behind the leader there, and I think it was only because they got to see that first race that he didn't. And I think that was the winning move, to be honest, to stay on the back of Moravia and stay one off. Just had that perfect run, Tashi. So well done, Tom Sherry, to hold that spot and not fall for the 3-card trick that Karen McAvoy did on Tim Tukey to go back to the inside. He was kind of forced there because he had to miss the start and had to sort of try and save ground. Braille a little bit keen on the back of Tashi, said they're definitely not going quick here, and the horses at the back basically faced an impossible task the way the races were run and how quick they came home. So, yeah, Tashi certainly had absolute dream runs. I think that's its 3rd run back, had dream runs at all 3 runs now, but going as well as it possibly can. I think this is as good as it can go, and, you know, off such an easy first half sprint home, there's no reason it shouldn't hold peak form off this. Certainly not a taxing run. Braille was good. Very good. It was the horse we were with and sort of on each way early, luckily. And even when they took the one out, I sort of thought each way was okay. Top 2, when it was sort of $8-9, looked a bit wrong. Only sort of firmed to like $6.50 or something like that. But ran to its form, did as good as it could, had its chance. But the winner just had that slightly better run. I think you sort of swapped the spots, you swapped the result. But good enough effort. Our Kobe Sun battled on okay. Moravia, the jury's out a bit here. It's sort of resumed 1200, which didn't look ideal in the Caballas race first up and knocked up pretty badly there. And again, sort of only just battled on from another soft tempo outside leader. Tintuki's holding its form really well, and Union Army went okay down the outside. Aprilia looks like it's certainly pulled up with something wrong there, but I don't think anything was reported. I'll just double check that one. Mild heat stress, so yeah, forgiving there, but still probably wanted to see more. Again, that form's, you know, pretty solid. There wasn't much between these horses apart from set up on paper, and they raced that way. So that was the benchmark, whatever it was, 88, 1200. Those horses can run well in similar grade, you know, if in sort of black type, maybe listed race somewhere, these horses certainly could probably measure up to that sort of grade. They're all going okay. Very quiet. No talkers, no slow punter attacking me, no one. Get through the ordinary races. Hopefully people will trot in by the time the better races come around. Highway Handicap Race 3. Looked like there'd be a heap of pressure here, and there really wasn't. But the way the races were run on the day, it was still a slow tempo or softish tempo, but they still probably went out quick enough for this grade. There he is. Just learning. There we go. That's good. Just making sure it was working, to be honest. Yeah, so what looked a okay race on paper where they go quick, I think this was one of the races where I sort of mentioned on Twitter that when you get these sort of patterns where the inside looks off, you often get negative tactics creeping in from a lot of connections because they're worried about pushing forward, ending up on the inside. It's just natural that they sort of end up going a little bit slower, a bit like heavy tracks. You tend to know that you're going to get softish tempos a lot of the time. That's why it sort of plays leaderish, because they are just sort of gifted those runs up on speed. When these races are like this, it's even worse. When you're not anticipating an inside-off sort of bias, then they sort of thinking on the fly, they tend to be negative naturally. So, yeah, like we got a lot of slow tempos, and this was one of them that they didn't go as quick as probably anticipated. A few horses just took a sit. So this horse is a pretty good horse. Once again, my girl, good ride from Collett, but one of these horses that sort of just poked up in behind and didn't overdo the bias and got out and ran really well just from that spot, sort of poking in behind the pace. I don't know why Michaela on Bomberia stayed on the inside. But as I sort of said, the leader did get, it's a bit like midnight music, martial music, that it's got good enough control, but then, you know, goes into the wrong part of the track. So, yeah, disappointing horse was probably compelling truth. I don't know why they sort of held it up. It's been let run. It's last two runs, and here it was sort of tried to ride with a sit. It looked pretty, but I just don't think it worked out. Perennial's on its back. The winner's chopping up underneath. Lyrical Beauty was sort of forced to face the breeze a little bit, and Remember Jack was dragged back at the start, which I don't think was ideal, and he does look like he was knocked up pretty late. So Yeah, whereas Compelling Truth was sort of given a dig there and let run his last couple. He was restrained, and that certainly didn't work out for him here. There weren't too many hidden runs or anything here that I could see.
Well back then is coming around the turn. Bamaria just leads.
Bamaria obviously goes back to that wrong ground, forgiving effort. Once again, my girl, a little bit green, trying to sort of force out. Jason Collett does a good job to get to the outside of her. Tishka. Perennial probably went better than I thought it would, but every possible chance, just sort of off speed, got to the right part. Tempo slightly against. There was certainly nothing wrong with the effort. So the inside horse, there's rolled back to the wrong ground, obviously. Winners had every possible chance, stayed out of that inside section and angled it clear, and then probably rolled back towards the borderline of it. But the race was pretty much over by then. Every Little Breeze did a good enough job, but certainly had its chance in the run. Racing just behind that slow tempo, probably had the best run in the race. And Remember Jack, I thought was a complete forgive. Certainly knocked up. About here you can see his action. He loses his action this sort of last 100, 150. So he can certainly build off that. Remember Jack, he's probably one of the few in the race that you might get a price about next up if he improves. You can see even on the line, Compelling Truth was coming back a bit. So I'm not... I think he's just a one-pace speed horse that can improve ridden more aggressively. In this sort of grade, I think this will certainly hold up. Like, once again, my girl's a horse that will probably be aiming up towards a Kosciuszko in the spring, I would say for sure. Bamaria on the inside there is a horse that just keeps improving. A real little trier that can at least measure up to this grade, if not a little bit better. And Perennial is improving all the time. And, you know, if it runs 1,200 metres, it's probably a horse that can improve quite a bit too. So another race where, you know, Bridie's Luck actually poked up all right in here, and even Lyrical Beauty was not horrific. So, yeah, I think, again, not a big knock on this race. I think it's certainly a solid race for its grade, and some decent form will come out of it. The first three races are all solid enough races. Yep, Hunting Apprenticeship, 120,000, and I'll give you 20% off. What's that? 24,000. That's 96,000 plus GST though, 105, and you can start your apprenticeship. I did find out what happened to Tessark. It was abducted by aliens and made into sushi train food. I hope that settles your query. That's race 3. Yeah, Perennial went okay for sure. It's interesting, those Massara horses, they just struggle to get over the line in these midways, considering their record away from town in similar races. Exactly versatile horse that you can race and then be sushi. All right, into the more serious races. I'll try and pick up my attitude. 96 years. Devil's Advocate fence. No, I don't. I don't think. I think the inside 4 sections were off in the straight. I've got no problem with that. I think everyone just overdid it, and what happens is the tempo was slackened so badly that everyone thinks it's a run-on bias when it's not. And then when you give the leaders such a big advantage, especially like in these high-level races where they're running home crazy sections, it's impossible to run on. So even the 2,000-metre race, the next race, they come at the lead. The winners come home 11 lengths above standard the last 600 from a 1-1 spot. How are you going to beat it? And there's a bunch finish. This race, they've come home 4 above. Think It Over's race, they've come home 5 above the last 800, 4 above the last 6. For the grade, 5 above Tropical Squall. You're not going to give horses like this, a start and a beating. So the bias was, I don't think, overplayed. It was underplayed. They just all shit themselves and didn't want to go near the spot and handed the advantage to horses that were happy to sort of ride the borderline because it was only the sort of inside 4 sections. So you come 5 off and you cut ground, you got a huge advantage if you were just on speed. It was just too big an advantage to give up. It wasn't a swooper's fence. Yeah, that's what I mean. Exactly. It's just not like that. And they didn't. Everyone was so shit scared of it that they all moved off the fence basically the whole way in the run. So those gates weren't at a disadvantage at any stage. And you had horses like Steffi Magnetica were able to hold spots that they certainly weren't predicted to, I didn't think. And then, they turned these 1,400 metres into 1,200 metre sit sprints. And that's why I think the form's going to be really difficult to follow. And you've got to be very careful with what sort of race these horses are going into next. But Skyline Stakes, they go quite slow here. Give full control to Storm Boy. He's sort of able to control it to the 800, nearly slows it down even further to the 6. Rips home from that position and, super strong horse with a couple of disadvantages to horses against him. Very interesting, actually, to hear anyone else's thoughts on this horse. But, yeah, this was, to me, a few things that I don't, I'm not going to say don't like. What I'm going to say is I don't like going to another 1,200 metre race is how I'll say it. Number one, again, not super clean away, and he doesn't muster strong speed. You can see these horses. I know this is a sort of, what do they call it, a parallax error. So they look like they're a long way in front when they're really not. But you can see him looking over, letting him come in and lead. That's not happening in a slipper. So if he draws inside, he's not going to be on speed in a slipper. I'd say be sort of 3 pairs back potentially if he jumps like this. If he draws wide, he's going back. I can't see him holding a spot in a slipper unless he really draws well and jumps really clean. He musters okay, that's for sure, but he's not super fast. And you got Kavanagh's horse here, Keen. What's this thing called? Indecisive. Prost is the horse that I thought was really interesting. Fast out. Prost. The other one was Duvana was slow out. And then actively sort of dragged back to find a spot. And then sort of ends up in this awkward position, horse inside and out, which I never really like. You've got Kavanagh sort of reverse parking on top of him, and he gets taken back that extra length and a half. So if he pressed forward in the outside leader, which the spot really wasn't there, I'm not bagging the ride, devil's advocate, if things went his way that first 200 metres and he ended up outside Storm Boy or in the Duvana spot behind him and tracked him, there's an argument for mine that he probably would have won. So he's a little bit keen, Storm Boy, but, cruising. Duvana every chance after missing the kick. A little bit keen here. Again, Prost in the awkward spot. President was the horse that I thought could improve, and I think he sort of rubber stamped himself as the next prep horse. He again makes a really sharp sprint, and then quickly he's Cactus. So if I get the right race, he didn't really do a lot, President. There was nothing super special, sort of 8 to the 6, 8 to the 4, 8 to the 3. He probably hasn't even sprinted as well as I thought he did, but there were so many sit sprint races on the day. It was hard to be, high up in those categories. I'll talk about that in a second, Super. It's a good Super Sunny. It's a good question. Yeah, so once they get to this point, McDonald's able to get to the absolute position he wants. This Lopey action is just, it's great. I love the horse, but just not, to me, the action of a horse that's going to be able to continue to race at this distance range. He looks like he sort of doesn't flatten out and accelerate really quick. He's sort of just building, and he's a horse to me that looks like he wants 1,400 metres, maybe a mile already. So I agree. Great to open up these margins off a slow tempo, not easy to do. I think Duvana was completely out-sprinted, and it is a horse that wants a mile at least. Parkour did a decent enough job. President, as I said, sort of ran into the race like it was going to do something and then quickly peaked. It's either a next prep horse or it needs to go back in grade or whatever. It's just not going to measure up to these horses this prep unless it was absolutely fat both starts and draws a gate and everything goes its way. But I think this horse has an engine. I think Parkour's a decent horse for sure, probably something like a Black Opal horse. I think these horses are all pretty good. Obviously a huge opinion of Storm Boy, but I think his next race is when he's going to be most vulnerable. He's been up a long time. already now with the 1200 metre run under his belt, whether they can keep that freshness in his legs to have him, you know, ready to win a slipper in what I think is going to be a decent quality slipper. Prost is a real bulldog that just keeps improving. He's going to be an absolute nightmare to beat in a race like the Size Produce Champagne Stakes. He can run a race in the slipper 100%. I think Duvana is going to be out sprinted in a slipper unless they go absolutely ballistic. I think it certainly needs probably a mile Champagne Stakes horse. This is sort of parkour back in grade. I think these horses are next prep horse. But yeah, from the question, Super Sunny's question there, how does Gay and Bott manage to these owners' instructions? Payne has said in past they aren't to race each other for the lead. Well, you'd be stupid to race each other. Like you'd certainly want to go out a plan. It could suit 140. Yeah, I think it could, but I think there's some really good 1200 metre horses that are going to run fast times. So I don't think they're going to be weak. I think you're going to have horses like Espionage and Straight Charge there that are just better 1200 metre horses. So if you compare this horse to a horse like what was Gay's horse that won it a few years ago, that was, I don't think it ever won another race, sat wide with Tommy Berry on it in white colours. Old slipper winners. Anyone remember what it's called before I forget? No, yeah, not fun. No, not fun. And there was a before that. It sat wide, like it was 5th, 6th, and sat wide. Vancouver. So if you compare this horse to a horse like Vancouver didn't have the opposition this horse had. So I don't think if it beats the horses the way Vancouver won the slipper, then this horse could be far that. It could be a Cox Plate horse. It could do anything. It still could be. But I just don't feel that he's a $2.40 chance is probably where I'm heading. Can he win? 1,000,000%. But I do think he needs things to line up to justify that price. You see through the line, like, he's not stopping. And then they go and show these stupid connections, like, goddamn, show the run through in a friggin' Todman. Like, it's not a Todman. What is it? A Skyline or something. Like, look at this. Who cares about this? And then they shoot back to it when it's all over. But actually, I'm going to try and find the stewards' footage. Well, there's such a big rap on it, and you won't see him again. What do you? Yeah, well, I think you will get 350, but it's not a certainty. The way that people look at races these days. You know, he's unbeaten. It'll be interesting to hear what Gay thinks, because if she's got 7 of the first 8 favourites, she's going to declare them all. It'll be very interesting which horse she tips. I just want to see the stewards' footage for the run-through. Probably best to not bring up last week and bring up this week. It'd be much easier. 2nd of March. Stewards' footage. I'll make it bigger with that.
6-4 favourite for the slipper and the rough, and Stormboy jumped out all right.
Sorry that it's not centred, but we'll... If they cross to the goddamn connections after this, I'm going to throw up. It's pretty hard from a head on. You see there, he sort of relaxes and pulls up. There we go, through the line, much better we can see. And then they stop it. He's not exactly stopping. I just think he's sort of looking for further. Straight Charge at 26 Illuminate bet. Yeah, well, that's it. I'm on the same bet. Straight Charge, Espionage are my 2 results on it. Very small Storm Boy, and I'm pretty happy with that. I think that for the slipper, I think that's a good option. I haven't bet into the size or whatever. I might actually look at the market when we talk about the races later to have a look what that's like. But, yeah, that's my opinion. Happy to land at $2. Things are going. What price is he now? I don't know. But it'll be interesting after Saturday. Obviously, there'll be adjustments after Straight Charge and Espionage run. If they run poorly, you know, I could be a long way out and it may firm. So, anyway, on with the races. But yeah, he was certainly like a strong pass mark. Prost was a strong pass mark. Duvana was a strong pass mark. But I think for size, Champagne and Parkour for something easier. Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think he last horse to start odds on. Yeah, there's some. It's just great because I've been bitching about 2-year-old racing for I don't know how many years now. Like, and even if you look at the last winners, like Cylinder, Fireman, Stay Inside, horrific. fun and decent horse. Didn't really get its chance to go on. Kiyomichi, Estajar, She Will Reign, probably, I don't even know what She Will Reign was as a horse. Capitalist, Vancouver. Like, it's been a long time since we've had a good bunch of strong 2-year-olds. Well, it is and it isn't. You can, there's some. They still make mistakes. They've never been worse at their job setting prices. It's just trying to take them is the hard part, and they put up 140 instead of whatever. So there's some handicaps to futures betting at the moment for sure. But there's also absolute wombat setting the prices to a certain degree. So you've just got to be on the ball and a little bit lucky. Race 5, 2,000 metres. Garriman Park handicap.
Redstone well, the favourite, jump well. So did Perfect Thought and Mission Phoenix.
Well, it's the best slipper I've seen. Potentially, if they all make it there, it's the best slipper I've seen for a long time. It could be one of the better ones. It's been a long time since Gaze had this dominance, back in the ha-ha days or whatever they were. But it's good to see, to be honest. I think, and I hope Switzerland and whatever make it there. They're the ones that I think are going to struggle. But if they get there, it's only going to add to the race. Lady of Camelot and whatever that winner was called, Hayasugi, get there, it'd be great. Yeah, it's not like it was 10 years ago with the futures. I remember even longer than that, like when Cold Tidy and whatever used to send them out by mail. Those were the days you can get on for whatever you want. And they didn't firm, like I saw there was one horse in the Riesling on Saturday that I like a little bit, and it's $17 into $9. Like, that used to take a bit of money. So yeah, this race, not that exciting. I thought Zach was very lucky here. Like, he's got the absolute perfect position, and for whatever reason lets Perfect Thought in, and then not only does he get off his back, he then goes to the fence. Guess his argument is he's now on the back of the favourite, but when the fence is not ideal and you're on a horse that's, really well set up, that's going to find the right ground, why would you give that up? Absolutely no idea. I know he gets suspended for what he does later in the race. But at this position, Redstone Wall, or whatever it is here, Redstone Well, which is a short price favourite, drifted a little bit to what looked as a more realistic price. Got a little bit keen in the run up to 2,000 metres for the first time, but really, pretty much had its chance. Floating, as I said, sort of gets keen, but should have been in the position that Perfect Thought's in. He gave that up. Logan Street line every possible. Miracle Spin. Just that little pair further back, considering how slow they go here. Really slow tempo. Verona's out the back and already off the bit. I thought its effort was very good, and Louisville's, up against it with that slow tempo as well. Zach cuts the corner, so he's arguably in, nearly the worst ground here, and he gets suspended for what he does trying to push out of that ground. So he's had to make his move in that slow ground, even think it over or whatever it's called later, had to come through that. He got under them a little bit better ground. So he's cut through probably on the edge of that wrong part and then gets suspended for what he does here, drifting out. Miracle Spin gets that sprint through, and it's only, a race in whatever. It's just a sprint home, really, a 400-metre sprint. So Redstone Wall has to be disappointing, even though it got that little check. Miracle Spin is probably the one horse that was entitled to peak on its run because it had to make a longer sprint, and the rest of all really had their chance, and this guy was out the back last and off the bit early, and, arguably one of the strongest through the line. So, yeah, a good first up run from Verona. It's run the 5th fastest 800 of the 200 of the day and run 7th, beaten 3.5. So it's one of the horses to follow, I think, from the meeting. Verona thought it was a really nice clean-out first up run. No real excuses for those across the line. What do you do with the form? I don't really know, because they went so slow. Do you even treat that as 2,000 metre form? It's probably a really nice barrier trial for the first 5, 6, 7 across the line for another 2,000 metre race. Yeah, I don't know how it won. I was like half tipping it, so I was probably cheering for it to win the photo, just for anyone who was sort of following and gets my sheets and things like that. I didn't have a bet myself, but I thought that it got done for sure. And I was sort of half blowing up. I wasn't half blowing. I was blowing up about the ride of what he'd done to get it beat. So, yeah, I was kind of amazed when I got the photo. Yeah, well, yeah. I think, you know, you get in trouble for bagging apprentices, and I'm not bagging. I'm bagging. What are you doing? I'm not bagging, but I'm bagging him. I think he needs to be seasoned. I think he needs to get stronger. And I think you do that by riding more against, you know, provincials and things like that. I think he needs to get out and get stronger and ride bad tracks, bad horses, and learn how to win on these horses. I think he's a little bit, it's a bad word, spoilt. And I don't think it's his best path of improvement, the way they're using him at the moment. I don't think he's improving. But he's only really young. I'm not bagging him as a jockey. I think he's got a tremendous upside. You know, you wouldn't swap him upside for anyone probably in the room, but, you know, in 10 years' time. But at the moment, I think he's, you know, the horses they're putting him on, big weights and things, no claim, doesn't make a lot of sense. Yeah, sorry, betting-wise, I sort of see that message. I didn't think it was bizarre just because it had every favour last start in a fast run, poor race where it lobbed the right spot, was given the best ride you've ever seen, and then had to rise to 2,000 metres. In what looked a deeper race, I think the 250 was just silly. And, you know, these big moves that come. Yeah, I thought it was 10 games, Dave. I thought it was 10, not 12. So I was bitterly disappointed with the 12, but my hand and my body was not ready for it. And, yeah, I was pretty average the first half, and then I ran out of petrol late. But, yeah, I'll certainly try and prepare better for that event next year. That was brutal. But, yeah, the bowling was terrible. The drive home at midnight was not ideal, with the back spasming like an absolute lunatic. I'm certainly getting older quicker, and that's life. But at least the F1 was on, so at least I got a bit of reprieve there. Could listen to it on the way home. Yeah, so that's that race. I'd be treating that race as a barrier trial for, you know, anything that ran well in it, especially Verona, can build off that. It's a nice platform to run well in another 2,000 metre race. I'd be scared if they were stepping up to 2,400 off that run, just because it was basically a barrier trial sit sprint. All right, now into some more interesting races. Sweet Embrace Stakes. Manal the winner. The time overall is pretty average here. And they go out pretty steady. They slow up. And they don't really rip home. So, long story short, my look at the race, I think the winner's a solid horse. I don't think it's top level, but it can have improvement. So I'd be factoring that in a little bit. I think the second horse is very good and was given a pretty average ride and set an enormous task. I think the third horse was a good effort, and was given an average ride too, but sort of cut through and was able to save ground. And I think the fourth horse was a solid run, but is not up to, you know, slip a grade sort of thing, something like that. It'll be dropping back in grade. Yeah, I think everyone in the planet, unfortunately, will find it fly, but it was a shame. It sort of drew one first time out, which ended up being horrific, and then it drew wide here. And, you know, certainly I just hate seeing this, especially when you see how slow the tempo was. Is that I blow up about it because I believe if you're going to find this position in run back, you should be there because the horses in front are running away from you. They're going too fast, not because you're physically dragging the horse out. So I'd rather see this guy sit 5 wide, no cover up here than be dragged back 6 lengths further back in a tempo that's, you know, what was it? They've gone 8. No, they've gone, no, not that slow. So, you know, a couple of lengths slow. But they're certainly not jetting along here. And he's given up at least sort of 2-3 lengths of the back of David Payne's horse early for absolutely no reason. Whereas, you know, Extreme Diva's done the same thing.
With good speed is Chateau Miraval, and Chateau Miraval is going to lead from Photographics, then Diddle Dump Lingfellow. So
Manal's lobbed in the absolute ideal spot, just behind a solid enough tempo. Everything's gone right for it. The horse outside it wasn't a bad run to Toka, coming off a dream run at Canterbury. I actually think this horse will make a horse next time in Valabing. but not real worried about it at this stage. I think X Factor wise, you know, I don't think it'll get in a slipper because it won't have enough money. But Fly's got the X Factor for me in this race. You can see it's keen, dragged back. Certainly could settle much closer. If it gets the run Manal gets, I think it absolutely shits in. Extreme Diva has had 2 runs, probably at peak fitness here. Fly might be one short of that. Extreme Diva cuts the inside on the borderline of that poor ground again. So this is, again, you know, whoever was willing to do this during the day tend to be rewarded. So who rode it? Chad Schofield and Collett, who's normally the king of going inside, decides to go wide. You know, it's not a bad decision, but I think this is sort of gets to the back of the winner eventually. But that was the difference between winning and losing on the day for a lot of runners, was the ones who sort of took this run or had the right run in transit ended up winning over the horses that were set that big task. So, you know, Fangirl's obviously the biggest exponent of that. Diddle Dumpling improved significantly from its run at Hawkesbury, where it was given an absolute shocker of a ride. Not surprising, but good to see. It can certainly knock over a lesser race. Stuck it out well, I thought, Diddle Dumpling. Fly closing really hard. Photogenics is sort of in a weird spot there and a bit of a forgivey but average effort. Patoka sat wide the whole way and did a good enough job. I said it was a softish tempo, even tempo, softish speed, but not too many races were run at fast tempos of the day, so maybe there's a bit of wind there or something that was affecting things. But yeah, no knock on the winner. Had its chance, done a good job. Extreme Diva did a good job, even though it sort of cut through. But Fly was the one to me, whether it's this prep or next prep. You know, I just can't wait to see her develop fully and continue racing. Yeah, it did a good job, Diddle Dumpling. I just don't think it's, you know, seasoned enough for to step up in grade or anything like that. It was good to see that it proved its first up run where it was well fancied in a much easier race than this, and it was kind of poor there. But everything that sort of did go wrong, or could go wrong, did go wrong. A bit slow away, got keen, did a lot wrong. So yeah, I think this form's maybe not top level, but certainly solid enough. Manal's a vegan. I'll always lay. Looking forward to the Fangirl ride analysis. A lot of potters on Twitter. I'll lay the balls at it. Would like to have a neutral view. Yeah, I just think the price was wrong, but I'll talk about it later. And it was a very average ride. Yeah, I think there's 2 schools of thought when reviewing a race like this. Obviously, the time's not great, so you're usually on the back foot there. Like you're sort of thinking negative to neutral. And when a horse like Diddle Dumpling, who was beaten in a maiden at Hawkesbury last start, runs well, alarm bells tend to go off about the race in general, but it's trials and everything before that, and then you watch the replay in isolation, you'd say that it was a complete forgive. So it's good to see that it's improved off that. This winner was lucky to win the way it did at Canterbury, but still had a bit of substance to it. And, all this form has some substance. I just don't think it's slipper substance.
Too good in the sweet embrace. Beat Fly. Extreme Diva third. Shadow Miraval fourth. Then Diddle Dumpling. Further back to...
I think everyone's trying to compare Fangirl to Winx because we need a Winx. We need a new horse that can carry racing to, headlines. We need a new Black Caviar, and we really don't have one. So at the moment, the 2-year-olds are the only horses that are shining lights for mine. Like even Mr. Brightside, what is he? He's a very, very good horse, and you never have anything negative to say about him. But is he the most talented, flashy horse you've ever seen? Not. Is he the most tradesman horse I've ever seen? He'd be in the top 10 probably. He's just an absolute tradesman. Yeah, I think I don't even know how to say that name. Zispo. It's especially like they put up even bigger odds Fly. And once the draw came out, it was, always going to be a bit of a task. And I think, I was keen to back it. You either went very small win only or, yeah, 1 by 3. I think that was definitely justified in this case. Obviously, it's worked out that that was the best way to go, but you either reduced your stake and hope that she got that bit of luck early or found a position, and then your sort of $8-9 was over the odds, or you sort of played it that she was good enough to overcome a little bit of trouble, and if she got that luck, you were happy to sort of play it both ways. So I think that's a fair enough assessment. No more car. Yeah, the car situation's a funny one. There's just racing in general is a bit weird at the moment. That the obvious things just don't come to fruition. That she should have gotten a bit of trouble for, whether it was her fault or not. She probably should have gotten a bit of trouble. And if the girl who sent the video to one of her friends gets in trouble, it's just all silly. There's protected species and whatever. Like, who really cares at the end of the day? But it's nothing to do with racing, really, unless she was presenting to the races with that in her system. Surround Stakes, an absolute joke of a race, tempo-wise, really slow, ripped home. Tropical Score was first up. We've missed the race that you want to talk about. I'm going back to the Chipping Norton, take that all back. Slow to the 800, and then they rip home from the 800, so they sort of quicken it up a length and a half, and then get home fast from the 600 as well for this grade. Winners sort of come home 9 lengths above standard for the last 800 metres, so I'll have a look at Fangirl. She's run the fastest 8 to the 6, 6th fastest 8 to the 4, 2nd fastest 8 to the 2, and 3rd fastest last 200 of the day. So how anyone could say that she didn't run well, they've got rocks in their head. If you assessed that that's where she was going to settle in the run and you didn't lay her, you've got rocks in your head. I honestly thought she'd be in front of 3 or 4 runners here for sure. She obviously missed the kick. The ride itself, I think, is very lacking in urgency. It's probably the best way. We'll have a look to see whether he sort of had a potential chance to make ground earlier in the race. Sort of could he have pinched or cut under? I'm not sure if he did. So he's obviously in a horrible position from this spot where he's got Arapaho in front of him, Athabaskan in front of him, Navajo Peak. Everyone's basically in front of him and in the running line. So, where's he going to go? Nash jumps well, box seats. He wins the race when he sort of drops the hammer and doesn't wait for her. And I think Corey Brown was interesting to listen to him. He was obviously desperate not to upset J-Mac and say it was a bad ride, but he said he sort of didn't see the horse and he should have seen the horse. So, I think he's right in what he says. Like, it was a pretty average ride. Was the run as good as she can go? I believe so. I don't think she can go an inch better. So, how do you assess, if you go back and USP are shorter than even money, you're probably saying that she would have landed in the position maybe here, back at Navajo Peak, and she probably wins. So if you assess her that she doesn't jump poorly and she lands here, you probably got her, $1.60, $1.70 chance. Back here, what is she? What price is she? Nash has given Who's a Good Ride. She's beat it quite well, probably even money, something like that, $2.25, $2.50, something like that. So, the price was probably too short in hindsight. I didn't like the race. I thought the price was ridiculous. I thought the best play was sort of Lindemann the place and wanted to muck around with some same-game multis, but I did think she'd win. Navajo Peak should have been just about retired.
Hard in the lead by 2 lengths on Lindemann, who's got to a clear second, so there should be no traffic issues today for Lindemann. 2.5 further back to Navajo Peak. The pace is solid. Then think it over.
Yeah, well, like from here on, where can he go? Because in this position here, he's got Arapaho on his outside, in front of him, and Athabaskan holding this spot on the fence. He's got Cascadian inside him who's not really allowing him to go anywhere. But even if he went there, where's he going to go? So the only thing he could do here is try and extend his run. And they're not, make an 800-metre run on her. And she's not really that horse. Like, maybe, I don't know. All he could have done is really slide into it here. And now it's where they've sort of started to pick up the tempo. So he's sort of in Shitsville throughout. The lead is not there. It just drops out. Lindemann obviously every possible chance. Nash just is lucky that Just Fine drifts too far wide and allows him to take that run that's just sort of on the edge of the bad ground, and then absolutely knife's edge cuts through and then accelerates. This horse has improved significantly off its first up run. James thinks he's probably got the winner, everyone covered, a bit like Corey Brown said, and she's just run out of her ass and got beat. So, is what it is. I don't think there was anything untoward, and the ride wasn't probably his best, but what was he going to do? Where was he going to go? I mean, if he takes off earlier, does he win? I don't think he does, so I don't think it was just sort of once it missed the kick, the cards were dealt to him, and there was not really another hand that he could have played. Cascadian was all right. Lindemann was all right. Do they go to a race like the what's it called, the All-Star Mile? I've heard Cascadian's going there. He's a 9-year-old. They're calling him a draw card. Pretty funny. Arapaho was pretty good for slow tempo. I thought Athabascan stuck on really well off a slow tempo. They've both done a good job. I think Just Fine was busted up in the spring and hasn't returned. So that's a shame because it looked like a really electric-looking horse and they just sort of maybe shouldn't have run in the Metrop. Yeah, Athabascan ran really well. If he goes forward a bit at the start, Zach probably lets him in. Yeah, well, that's probably it. If you want to be really nitpicky, he probably could have had a shot at, rolling forward and putting some pressure on Zach. But the problem is here that where's he going to go? Like, yeah, that's the only spot he probably could have aimed up at. You're right. Like, if he jams her, maybe he can go for that. Maybe he can go for that spot. Maybe. Pretty tricky, right? Surround stakes. They've been useless for a while. I was talking to Mark Newnham today about Romantic Warrior, and even he's like saying that the horses that he's beating up there are nothing special. Romantic Warrior, and for it to win the Cox Plate here, sort of sitting outside leader, and it was a slow run race, ugly race. Like, what is all that form? But I'll talk more about that later. Surround stakes. Good questions, by the way. I'm sorry it's going to probably take him too long, but I'm enjoying answering the questions. So a few things here. The horses drawn wide were obviously keen to go back. You've got Roll On High, Zardozi, Arctic Glamour, Toodle Vida and Steffi Magnetica find those positions, which, ended up being, you can't call it the fence because they don't go near the fence, but because everyone overdid moving off the fence, it became the new fence, and they just sort of railed up and got the Harrow Park runs and run really well. Learning to Fly tried to go forward, but he sort of ends up in a outside leader position, which arguable whether that suits her. Regardless, the tempo is really slack, and she was just okay, but I'll be forgiving of her. Like, she gets cover when Macarena rolls forward. Second up off that long break. Maybe there's not a lot between these fillies, but in the run, winner, second, third, fourth. I think Macarena runs fifth. Maybe Crescilia and Komochi, they're around seventh, are they? I don't even know. Roll On High gets back over the top of them. So Roll On High is the standout performer late. Toodle Levita runs the fastest last 400, last 800, 600, 400, 200 of the race. So its run has to be good, even though it's cutting up that inside section. It was 100-1. What does that do to everyone's confidence in this race, these horses going forward? Super difficult. And I think the horses at the back are probably potentially the horses that could come to the fore later on. So yeah, Tim was in a bit of trouble on not Fly, same horse, same colours. Macarena, I talked to him about sort of this first part of the race, and what I thought was interesting is he had all the intent in the world to sort of roll forward, especially after she jumped really well. And the horse just didn't have that speed. You can see he's kind of working on her here and she just can't go. So he sort of just let her get into a rhythm and ended up rolling forward naturally as the tempo really came out of the race. So he actually wasn't too disappointed with the run she had because he couldn't have got there any quicker than what he did, even if he sort of pressured her, he doesn't think. So she's an interesting horse. I don't really know what to make of her. But the winner's obviously returned really well. She's a hard horse to sort of line up as well. Has she improved? Not sure. Second horse is Airborne, but I think she's a 1,200-metre horse. I don't think they'll step her up in distance. I'd be shocked. It's sort of this race has been run like a 1,200-metre race, which has really helped her. Tutor Levita's an interesting horse. It's a horse that she could go to a Coolmore and run really well. What do they do with Learning to Fly? I'm not sure. Cristilli again sort of sat 3 and 4 wide the whole way. I thought Tiz Invincible was again the horse that was quite disappointing. Whether it's now going to be at peak fitness. If it came back to 1,200 metres, I'd be interested in her. If she goes up in distance, I'd be very sceptical. Yeah, the horse to really have a good look at is this Roll on High. Is that its name? Yeah, Roll on High. I thought it was one of the runs of the day. I thought Arctic Glamour went great. I thought Zardozi went great. And they run, where, last and second last or something? Third last and second last. And Komochi sort of just got shuffled back that pair further where it didn't have that run that it got last time, which I thought it would. But, yeah, no real excuses for Learning to Fly. No real excuses Tiz Invincible. Huge pace disadvantage to these horses that have been forced to come from back and wide and get out to the wrong part of the track. And that's why I think this horse Roll on High, which I won't stop it again and we'll watch. A great ride from Hippo. Controlled the race, took off when he needed to. She was able to sustain that sprint and hold off what is probably one of the overachievers of the autumn so far in Steffi Magnetica. She's been really good. I think they bet 5 to her in a race at Bathurst first up. So what she's been able to do is great. But look at this Roll on High through the line. I don't know where she'll go. I think she definitely peaked that last little bit, like right across the line. I think she peaked, so she'll improve off that again. The Moody Camp's really under the pump, but this horse looks like one that can improve out of this race, which not many of them, I think, have great improvement, especially next start. Zardozi, I think, she'll probably end up in a race like the Oaks against Orchestral. And, obviously Orchestral looks one out of the box, but I think she's pretty good. Whether she... yeah, and I think even Arctic Glamour's a bit of a forgive there. 500 in the new Sydney market, new norm. What's this? Tutor Levita. Pretty dirty one out to things. Forgive the whole field, Learning to Fly. I can be forgiving of Learning to Fly just because she was second up off a long break, but she's not the horse. I'd love them to take it to a new stable and spell it. She's beautiful and I love her, but I can't forgive. Yeah, I'm kind of in that bracket. She'll be 3 dozen. Yeah, she's a beautiful horse. Beautiful golfing runner. Yeah. I'd love to see Caulfield. Mia. Who's a Mia? Oh, over here somewhere? No. Sorry if I'm missing any. Regardless of the ride, surely the combined factors of ground and walking are 2 good reasons to sit at the price. I missed your comment before, Daniel. Yeah, the price was crazy. I don't think soft ground was against her at all. I'm assuming that was Fangirl. Yeah, but I think she ran to her best. Yeah, I think Tiz Invincible maybe is a little bit overrated. I think they've tried to get her to run a distance that's not suitable to her. She's a big, heavy horse that looked pretty gross first up, like fat, and maybe they've just tried to leave a little bit too much in the tank to get her to a mile. And I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped her back to 1,200. We might see a better horse, but we'll see. Yeah. I definitely didn't declare Komochi. I didn't have a bet in the race. So yeah, these horses are probably horses that you all need to assess next start. Another really slowly run race. Stepping stones for Zardozi, Arctic Glamour. Bit harsher on the ones that sort of finished midfield. Roll on High is the horse that certainly looks to have good upside. No knock on the winner, but it did have every chance. I'd be concerned about the second horse going up in distance, but is flying, needs things to go its way, had everything possible go its way there. Two to La Vida's an interesting one because it kind of got the right run through, but was certainly the strongest horse from the 600 home. So interesting race where you'll need to be careful going forward about nearly every run in the race and sort of where they go. Guy Walter Stakes, absolutely putrid race. They absolutely walk. They slow down even further and they get home quick, but they are entitled to. Obviously, Horsebred Flirt misses the start. That was basically it, out of play. Interesting that the winner's basically fit, very limited horse. I think, what was it, like a 70 rater or something like that, that should have been getting 6 or 7 kilos off horses and wasn't, very poorly in at the weights, wins the race. And Miss Fabergé sort of is the other pointer that this form's very sketchy. The issue with that is that it was basically a barrier trial for most of these horses. Like More Secrets, unless it had a secret jump out somewhere, hadn't trialled, hadn't jumped out publicly, so it was going to be underdone. Horsebred Flirt, as you said, sort of misses the starts, out of the race. Jewess is completely out sprinted. So what's left in the race? Hinged was the one that had the right run. I've always thought she was pretty steady. I think she had a chance to win this race and didn't. And, got a midweek horse with midweek form that comes out and wins a Group 2. So, what is this race? Very steady race. What do you learn from it? Not a lot. It's probably going to be, I'm not going to say the end of Hell Hath No Fury's career, but it's a great race for it to win Group 2. It's worth a lot of money to this horse. It's just going to be very hard to place because I don't know what its benchmark will be now, but it'll be diabolical. So it was a 72 before Saturday. And it's now what? Where's the pop-up? I don't know. Opening new tab. Is that going to work? This is the problem with the benchmark system, is they look at things on face value. The horse wins a Group 2, but they don't look into why or, outside factors, the actual strength of the race. And they sort of hammer them. How do you spell the horse's name? Hell Hath No Fury. So indicative benchmark now. They've put it from, they haven't even done it, 72 to who knows what. They probably wait for it to be declared. Country race needs to show. Oak's going to go all right in the Turnbull. I'm not sure about the Caulfield Cup. Yeah, I think that jockeys are all being undertrained, to be honest. I think unless you've got someone, like a Waterhouse horse in the race, setting an even tempo, they don't know what to do. There's not too many horses. I reckon, without knowing the figure, there'd be 3 or 4 jockeys in Sydney that lead probably 2/3 of the races. And if they don't lead, the rest just don't know what to do. They don't want to be there. They're not used to being there, so they do weird things. Like, look at this. Miss Cuvier is being choked down in front, basically, by Chad. And, it's probably to its detriment. He's just going too slow on the horse. Hinge has certainly had every chance. Hell Hath No Fury, every chance. Jewess is a bit keen back in the field, gets out sprinted. She was all right through the line. More Secrets, obviously not fit, but sprints up and peaks, runs okay. And Miss Fabergé is just in the absolute ideal spot, gets the perfect run, hard fit horse, runs to its absolute best and has run 4th in a Group 2. Barbie's Fox went okay back in the field, and Horsebred Flirt was just an impossible task from back where it was there against a ridiculously slow tempo first up after headbutting the gates. Like, I'll actually show that. It's pretty bad. What happened to it? No one's fault. Where is this race going? These things are popping up somewhere, but I can't find them. Here we go. Where is that? Must be behind this. So Hell Hath No Fury. Where is he? It's in here. Bang! Headbutts the gates. So no one's fault. Bang. Horrendous. So, yeah, complete forgive for it. I think it's got a barrier trial, not because of the start issue. They've put a warning on the horse, but has to trial because it smashed its head on the gate. So that's an interesting one. I've not seen that before. It's
Proven thoroughbred Guy Walter Stakes. There's the light.
yeah, not a race it's really worth too much more looking at. Just a complete forgives was already said to Osbred.
It's going to be close.
I doubt that the market will make too many mistakes here, but obviously if Miss Fabergé goes back into another Group 2 or something similar, you'd be harshly against it. It's been heavily flattered here. The winner's been heavily flattered. Second horse is okay. Third horse, okay, but as you said, it's a pretty crappy race. You're just treating it as a barrier trial for it. Barbie's Fox had the tempo against, went okay, but found the right part. What do you do with Jewess? I don't know. I don't even know what it is anymore. But through the line, she was actually not terrible. She obviously wants further, but what do you do with the horse? In Miss Cuvier, I think, is a Class 1 horse that, run alongside it after leading up and going too slow. So I'm just going to leave that race there. This was a good ride. Actually, Tom Sherry produced 2 good rides on the day. He's been riding absolutely ordinary for mine and produced 2 really good rides. So well done to him. He sees the gap in the start of the race here with the 2 designated leaders in Coal Crusher and Winchat, not looking like they're going to get across. He has the balls to put the pedal down and ran really good time. He extended he's like a long, even tempo of solid sections. He sort of rated the horse really well, run fast time first up. I actually thought the horse was interesting because I thought it would get that nice run behind the 2 leaders, and I was concerned its fitness might not be there to hold off any back markers if they went too quick. So good training performance to have it ready to run this sort of time first up and maintain a sprint off, what was probably the fastest speed of the day. And it's as I said, it's maintained it. So fast speed, even tempo, fast time. That's usually a good sign. And yeah, it trialled up with a bit of intent, which was, also interesting. The second horse, New Energy, new to the Mars stable. I didn't know anything about it. Its effort's really good. Last 200s, exceptional. Democracy Manifest sort of runs okay from the back, peaks late. It's an interesting one to have a look at. Back towards the inside. Anything else that's of interest here? Kovalika was a decent run. Hard to say every possible. Coal Crusher, we'll talk about, probably a bit of a flat track bully that likes to dictate races, not be dictated to. So if he backs up in this Newcastle race on Friday, which I think only Joe Pride will back up if he's ready to go with blinkers on or something like that. He's probably extremely hard to beat in a race like the Newcastle Stakes. The Winchat, never the greatest to begin, but as soon as there was some fast tempo in it early, he was always on the back foot and gets stuck chasing. Yeah, so Democracy Manifest, Kovalika, New Energy in the Australian Bloodstock horse colours are the ones that sort of to keep an eye on from the back. They don't get any pace advantage here because even though they're going quick, they don't slow down. So it's a fast, even tempo, which is always difficult to make ground from the back on, especially if you're got a fitness query over you. So good efforts, I think. If they've run on from the back here, there's some merit in it, especially if they've come wide. Democracy Manifest does its thing. It's got that real, sharp sprint and probably levels out late. It's definitely a pass mark. Kovalika to the outside, New Energy underneath it. Said Coal Crusher, a real pass to solid mark without its blinkers. Hard to say. Probably just needs to come back in trip. I think it's going really well. And Kovalika gets through its gears late. So I'd say very interesting new kid on the block, New Energy. Kovalika a pass mark. Democracy Manifest at least a pass mark. Pass mark just in the wrong spot, needs to dictate one-paced horse that struggles to make up ground, whereas these horses all have turns of foot or can build through gears. this horse doesn't have it. It's just got the same sort of gear as Fearson. So if you sort of swap the runs, I'd say you would have got a similar result. Just taking the sits detrimental to Cold Crusher here. If it said blinkers on and tries to pull a Fearson next start, I think it's ready to win. And Fearson's an underrated horse. You know, really talented horse on its day and looks to have, you know, continue to improve. So that's Sydney. Yeah, I don't know what to make of Cepheus. Just sort of poked around at the back, didn't it? And, you know, whether that, I don't know if he pulled up with any issues or what, but it's certainly not ideal, but see what happens. We'll have a quick look at Melbourne. I haven't done a lot there, so I actually haven't looked at the races at all since Saturday. So I've seen them once, and that's it. Paul Bastille, 1,000 metres down the straight.
This is in. The 2-year-old's just about ready.
I'm just going to look at them once for my own sort of mental.
Drifting jumped away cleanly. Also Zetal in away pretty speedily, and Bold Bastille over on the far side from barrier number 1 began well. And
so the track, from what I saw, was sort of middle to inside was the place to be. That's where Estrella came later in the day. The outside draws, you know, had to sort of make their mind up where they were going to be in the run. So Bold Bastille drew the right sort of spot as it ended up. I did laugh to see that it was ridden against the way they wanted it ridden last start and got the result this time. I know there were a lot of interesting reports on it from the yard and whether it had a setback coming into last start, but it certainly improved and never really looked in danger here. I don't think that form's going anywhere exciting. You know, it's not going to, I don't think that slipper form or anything like that. Time's pretty steady. Went out pretty even, come home just below, and time overall's nothing too exciting. So I don't think we missed anything there. We'll have a quick look at another Will. Very exciting horse, this one, genuinely. Controlled tempo, sits up on the speed. Love the adaptability of this horse, and, you know, sprints home in, I don't get all the breakdowns of sections there, but I would say probably, you know, fastest last everything on the day. So he does it easy, which I love. I think he paraded a lot better. Haven't got Nico's. Actually, I'll pull that up. This is what I like, using Nico's mounting yard mail for, what race was this? Race 6. So what number was he? Get rid of this first. Number 6. So best he's seen him. Super strong. Super strong. Great time. More relaxed today than last start. Those are the sort of things, you know, that are mounting yard mail situations are what I want. Anything significant from this start to last start, horses resuming, things like that. So it's great to have that sort of confirmation. If you liked him, obviously it was very short, so it wasn't hard to like him at $1.50 SP. But if you're also taking $1.50, I think you want those boxes ticked. You want them all ticked for mine and some. But yeah, very talented horse. He's done nothing but impress me every time he stepped out. Effortless acceleration. Travels kindly in the run. Doesn't do anything silly. Doesn't lay in, lay out. You know, flattens out and really and truly, you know, sticks his neck out. Look at that effortless acceleration. He just looks like could be anything. I don't know what his plans are. I saw that he was nominated for, I know Jimmy Star's the one that was nominated for the Newcastle Stakes, but I'd take this horse home over Jimmy Star every day of the week. Yeah, if it ends up in a Doncaster, holy cow, it's going to be interesting. And I agree, so I didn't see Josh's comment back there, but New Energy certainly looks a Doncaster horse too, which is what we need, because the Epsom was diabolical, I thought, in the spring, and the Doncaster certainly needs some new blood. Like, talking, having horses like Mr. Brightside in it again, like, seriously, we need something new in there, and that horse of Waller's that Kathy rode in the Epsom, like, it's just a joke. So it's good to see that there are a few horses popping up. You know, a More Victorious looks a Doncaster horse. If he can find his way into the field. And then you're going to have, you know, your Kovalikas and horses like that, I assume, again, whether... Well, I was up. Tempo in race 6. Gaps in the field were huge for a mile. Slow tempo, so good to see the gaps open up. And yeah, here there's none. Again, yeah, it's great signs, isn't it? Like they just... This one big gap opens, that's for sure, and then you sort of gaps back through the average horses. So I'd say there is very good merit in the win again, even though he's sort of just going through his grades. His 2's on. There's no knock on this horse from what I can see. Car's committed to the Guineas winner over that horse. That's interesting. English Sprint, we'll look at it once. Strong tempo. Solid enough time overall. These races are always nearly impossible to line up. I thought it was a ballsy ride from Shin to sort of put the horse right in the start. She showed that she's adaptable after last start. He sort of dragged her out and got caught in an awkward spot, had to make a long, wide run. Was able to do that. This time sort of uses her as a sustained speed horse. So a bit like Another Will. Great to see that adaptability. I think she's a really good horse. I think she's still, you know, going to be a lot better in the spring. What do they do with her? I'm not really sure. I think he'll pick his targets with her. I don't think he'll over-race her this time in because I think she's still a bit vulnerable mentally.
Leading a length to Navy King, who's full bore under pressure. Then Raikoki to Sonic Boom up the outside.
All right, 1 sec. I'm just looking at Nico's thing. Improved since last start. More relaxed today. Moving well. Attitude good. So that's a good sign. But I still think she's got some quirks to iron out. I think Cabalas was a little bit disadvantaged by the draw. But I think the better horse won on the day regardless. Obviously, the horse ran third anyway, Cabalas, but I think Josh did as good as he could. Like you know, where's he going to get to from this draw? He can't really improve on where he is. He's sort of got horses inside him that are half carting up that middle section, and there's nothing really he could do. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, literally. I think he sort of waited to that 400-metre mark to make his sprint, and he was out of carrots late, whereas the winner did all the bullocking work, maybe in the right part of the track, and was just a little bit dominant. The other horse closes, what's it called, Rock something. Robrick closes without ever really going to be in the race, just hides a bit of her merit. This fella down the outside was okay. The horse I was interested in was Midnight Opal. Did it do anything?
Still a good 2 lengths, Raikoki and
that Midnight Opal there.
And Robrick running on. Estriella, 100 metres to go. Look to be well and truly in front. Estriella getting weary. Robrick is
back towards the inside. Midnight Opal. Ran okay. First time up in grades. Been running in country grade. Didn't go as good as I thought it could. Yeah, I think the mistake was when they put up $6, $6.50 or whatever it was about Australia earlier in the week. You know, once they come race time, they were probably closer to what they deserved to be, and she was pretty dominant. There was a big wind. Well, the money's so big that the options there that if you're not, you know, why wouldn't you sort of head there as $1 million race?
The field is set.
Same prize money as the Australian Guineas.
They stand very well. Racing.
Tempo. Well, they went faster than I thought they did, so that's quite interesting. Makes the run of sort of V8 and those up on speed better than I thought it was. I thought they controlled the tempo, so even though he had cover and found the right position, your V8's run was quite good. This horse had every chance in the run, I think. I haven't had a good look at this, so there were horses like Zip Away and that looked like they were. I thought Apulia's run was not too bad, even though it runs. What is it, 11th? Beaten 6. Disappointing horses. Not really sure. Let's have a look at it.
Guineas. Verdad from barrier number 3 broke. They were followed next in the Targo. Next is Snow Patrol. Deeper around the outside, Zip Away, and then Riff Rocket the fence.
So Pulia's out wide here, isn't it? Well back. Who's this horse coming around?
And also King Colorado. Apulia was wide, had to snag back the
So this is a terrible ride on whatever this is. Is that the toppy?
Sunsets. So the front runner, the Pendragon at the 900 meters, led by
Yeah, Midnight Opal can go back to a highway for sure.
And they were followed by Verdad third, the inside of V8, a length away out deeper, Zip Away. Southport Tycoon at
What's this thing, number 5?
the 800 meters.
Jeez, it's been given a horror of a ride. Oh, it's Zip Away. Oh my god. Yeah, so it's been absolutely carved, Zip Away.
They were followed by Snow Patrol, a length away, then in the field a Targo, and Riff Rocket bailed away on the fence from Quintessa. A length and a quarter, Apulia, King Colorado, Run Harry, Run Sunsets, and Vieste, the Pendragon around the turn at the 500 metres, led by about 3/4 of a length to Hey Fat Cat. V8 now is tanking up on the outside from Verdad, Southport Tycoon, Cap Ferrar. They were followed by Snow Patrol, and behind them Riff Rocket. So the front followed.
So at the 400,
Run Harry, Run Sunsets, and
to a stop here, every chance in the run, gets its back every chance. Riff Rocket, no real excuses, gets through and gets on the back of the winner. Cap Ferrar, Apulia, the horse that certainly had the most torrid run of all time was Zip Away.
The Pendragon around the turn at the 500
King Colorado back in the pack a little bit.
metres, led by about 3/4 of a length to Hey Fat Cat. V8 now is tanking up on the outside from Verdad, Southport Tycoon.
Hey Fat Cat's running a really big race.
Snow Patrol, and behind them
Sitting outside the leader over a mile, running that sort of tempo. He's done a huge job. Hey Fat Cat. Verdad's stuck on okay. Riff Rocket certainly had its chance to do more than what it has done, whether it's looking for 2,000 metres.
3/4 of a length in front and won the Australian Guinea.
Who's run 4th? What's it called? Quintessa. Where was it in the run?
Were followed by Snow Patrol, a length away, then in the field a Targo, and
So 3 wide with cover.
End of the field inside of V8.
Not ideal, but not terrible considering the race shape.
The turn, led by about 3/4 of a length to Hayden Cap Ferrar. They were so the claims.
And the thing again, this is a fast speed, but even-ish tempo, slightly quick tempo. They haven't let up. The gallop's really good. The time's really fast. So I can be really forgiving of a horse like Apulia here. I think it's a huge effort. Zip Away, just a complete forgive. You'd probably want 3 weeks between runs for it to get over that run, to be honest. No real excuses for the others, just in behind the speed. Said sort of, hey, Fat Cat or whatever it's called was a good effort. Who's the horse that was just inside Apulia? Was that Snow Patrol? It was okay.
The field is set. 100 metres, led by about 3/4 of a length to Hey Fat Cat.
Oh, this is Snow Patrol here, right? The Snow Patrol's come off that 3 wide line. Got a decent enough run. It was King Colorado. It's probably just inside Apulia. I think it was Cherry Ripe, absolutely set for the race. And Peak's here. So he's going to want to be running 2,400 metres probably to pick up another race. If he can't run a distance, he's in a bit of trouble. King Colorado, which... it's pretty tough to say that it can, so... Yeah, I don't know what you do with this form, whether it's good enough for Randwick Guineas and Rosehill Guineas and races like that going forward, or not, because I'm not sure that Riff Rockets... Yeah, this 3-year-old form, I'll talk more about the 3-year-old form in a minute. It's very hard to work out what the strong 3-year-old form is or if there is any. But yeah, Apulia I thought was probably the most interesting horse going forward because it's definitely going to get to a race like the Derby. Which one was Sunsets? Was the thing running last in the
field is set.
The Busselton horse?
Run Harry, Run Sunsets.
Back second last here.
The Pendragon around of a length for Dad, so were followed by it. So the but Southport Tycoon looks the danger in front. Southport Tycoon takes the lead, draws a neck, draws 3/4 of a length in front and won the Australian.
Just given no chance, and yeah, it was basically a barrier trial, right? Yeah. Yeah, it was just a given a barrier trial, no knock on it. I don't think I'll bother with the Blaney. It was a pretty ugly race. That I don't think much will. No, I'm not even going to bother with it. Yeah, I love the run of Captain Evius too last start. Upcoming races this week. Yeah, 2 solid seconds in the Caulfield and Bushrank getting close up behind the mirrors. It does, and that was it. Like my argument, this is Daniel on YouTube. My argument about V8 into that race was the weight for age form surely was stronger than the other 3-year-old form leading up, sort of that Riff Rocket came out of, and that he was entitled to be closer in betting to Riff Rocket, which is probably right. But the winners come out of similar form race, so yeah, I don't know. Like I'll talk about probably the most interesting race. Well, they won't go to the Randwick. Nothing backing up, I don't think, in the Randwick Guineas. Whether the militarised Celestial Legend, Tom Kitten, NCAP, sort of exploring that form is interesting. So if you look at the Tom Kitten line, which... So its form is all around... Tom Kitten's form is all around NCAP, CO Wolf, Gambari, Pushy, Raff Attack, Cap Farrar, and then this time back in that Caballos race that was really slowly run, which is where Celestial Legend came through, which is the only time he's bumped into Celestial Legend. He's got form around sort of militarised back in the early days, and then I think, did it run in the Run of the Rose? I'm not sure. But trying to work out if any of that form's any good at all is probably the key to it. And I don't think it is. I think it's very steady form, all that sort of Rap Attack, Gambari form. The first up run was just a nothing slow run diabolical race. And this is when you're sort of assessing Celestial Legend versus the Tom Kitten form of last preparation. So sort of missed the kick, slow run race, jammed up, wrong part of the track. Clearly a run where you could be extremely forgiving of. And then when they went to 1400 next time out, even though he was a little bit lucky, Celestial Legend, sort of missing the kick and then ending up in a good spot. He did have to work a touch to get there. I know they're not going quick. And then he sort of half missed the run and let the momentum horses get around him. So I think a lot went wrong here for Celestial Legend. And this is the Tom Kitten form. So all of these horses, CO Wolf, all these horses are the Tom Kitten form, except for Celestial Legend, because I'm sort of forgiving him the first up run, and this is the first time he's really meeting these horses where he can sort of get his chance. And I think sort of everything that could have gone wrong kind of has, and he's hit his top and run away from him late. NCAP has got no improvement in him for mine. None of these horses can improve. I think Tom Kitten needs 2,000 metres plus to get near this horse. So for mine, he's completely dominant over these horses. Yeah, I wouldn't back Tom Kitten last represent for I think Master was a Villiers. Wait for from Buffalo River, yeah. Exactly. I love Weimark. Yeah, and then if you put this up against Militarize, what is his form? So, okay, he's come through that Golden Rose where he was a little bit lucky to win the race because he's not a sit sprinter. But this is all that form, that Cylinder, Moravia, Chuck, whatever his name is, NCAP, Tom Kitten form that looks pretty steady. You can give him a bit of a bonus that he's only been able to sort of level up and get going late and got over the top of him. He's a little bit like Celestial Legend. You'd say that most things went wrong here, and if they sort of went 200 metres further or he got a better run in transit, he would have beaten them easier. King Colorado kind of ties in there. And then he goes and runs okay in the Caulfield Guineas. Obviously, there's a bit of a weird one. He got a long way back and And then in the Cox Plate, he was given a pretty ordinary ride, and he's beaten only 2.5 lengths. But what is this form? And, you know, you say Mr. Brightside's arguably the best horse in the country now by default. But what is all this form, you know? I'm not really sure. And then he comes out first up and he's completely out-sprinted, but got going okay through the line. So here he's got the absolute dream run for mine. He's been prepped up with 2 trials, one of them with blinkers. He's got the blinkers on first time this time. This is as good as he can go. You got a horse like Lindemann, obviously Think It Over, sits up outside the leader, comes out and wins. Next time, Fangirl goes straight past him, comes out and runs well again. Cascadian comes out of this race and runs well. Lindemann comes out of this race and runs well. So this is real weight for age form for Sydney. But the second horse, if anything, is the one who's slightly flattered. You know, you've got horses unlucky, knocked up a little bit late, building through the line, would have got past it late, unlucky, complete forgive. What do you do with this form? Obviously, a slow run race, I don't know. So my thing is that I think Celestial Legend should be favourite for the Randwick Guineas, but I'm very scared of Militarised just because I think it's going to peak. I think it's going to peak here completely. He's given it 2 gallops at the race gallops, like what do they call them? Exhibition gallops, I believe, since that run with blinkers on. So I think it's a kitchen sink job. Blinkers on in the trial, blinkers on first up, blinkers in the gallops, blinkers here. I think this is his absolute target race. So, you know, if Celestial Legend was $455, I'd probably be anchoring it completely, but $350, you know, what do you do? Yeah, I can't back Militarised to beat Celestial Legend, but I think we'll get that sort of price anyway after barrier draws and everything is sorted. And if it draws poorly, you know, you'll probably get better, and we'll see. But yeah, I think Militarised is the one to beat. Sorry, I went a bit long-winded there, but I just wanted to talk about just trying to work out which 3-year-old form's any good or not. I think the Osmosis form that Celestial Legend was, those races in last prep, is stronger than the Tom Kitten sort of line of things, which is most of Militarised's form, but at least it does tie in with a bit of weight for age. Newcastle Stakes, it's just impossible to work out what horses are going to go there. So $1.50, think about it, first up 1,300 is ridiculous. But who's going to beat it? Who's going to show up? Obviously, half of these horses are going to the Newmarket. So again, I couldn't find anything too exciting here unless you've got a heads up that, you know, a Bella Nipotina and Espiona were going to lob in this race. I don't think about it's a $1.50 horse in many races, especially first up 1,300. So I'll be looking to take it on, but it's very hard to do that without sort of inside information. The Newmarket, the same. Like this horse, I think's the horse that could do anything. Magic Time. If it draws a gate and it's $8, I'll be backing it. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. But obviously, Imperatrice is the starting point there. But I'm happy to wait for barrier draws here. Yeah, I'm not too concerned about why I mark at this stage. I'll have a look at him in a minute. Challenge Stakes in Sydney is just super strange. So you've got Private Eye staying at 1,000 metres second up. Seems pretty crazy. I'm not sure if Remark's going to this race. I think it was earmarked to run next week. So unless they sort of drop on this race just because it looks weak, a week early, you would think Af Cabin's definitely not suited in this race at 1,000 metres, and it's $5. It seems a very strange placement. Passive Aggressive is a very interesting horse. It could easily measure up here because Private Eye surely has to be vulnerable second up at 1,000. It's strange for a horse that certainly peaks over a little bit further. I know he's sort of ridden upside down and ran well to a Imperatrice the other day, but yeah, second up at 1,000, he should be vulnerable. So, you know, a horse like Passive Aggressive, if he's near his top, and comes to Sydney, could certainly run well. All right, so that talked about the Guineas. That was the Randwick City Stakes. What race was that? I'm not even going to bother with the Randwick City Stakes. This is the race I was actually super interested in. This is the horse in Silmarillion. They put up $17, and it was just given an absolute Zach Lloyd special on debut. Just from these wide draws, he tends to overdo things. Tropical Score won't run in the Guineas. It'll go to the Coolmore. Fast run race here, but really fast overall time. Got a huge opinion of Gatsby's, and obviously Rosalind Star has obviously trialled up really well and run really well here. The only thing is this horse does get back towards that inside section, which was probably the right place to be, but on debut, I thought the effort here was super, and I'm not sure these fillies are bulletproof, so I think this horse can improve significantly here, and I'm pretty confident that James McDonald will ride the horse too. So this is it in the white cap. Jumps okay. You know, if the draws were a little kinder, it certainly could have settled closer, so I think it's got a little bit more natural speed than what it's shown here. They're obviously going very fast. But if you watch it sort of closely, it does get in a little bit of trouble, runs up their backsides a few times, even though I'm going to fast forward through it a bit. And then he sort of looks like he's going to go wide here, so he runs up their backside here and he looks like he wants to take off and ends up going back towards the inside here, so tries to angle back, ends up having to cut back towards, so check there and then back towards the inside. I love this last 200 metres from this horse. For a horse on debut to sort of get through these conditions, everything, and then close. He was only just starting to lengthen there, or she. And see through the line, she's coming. You know, I think she's going to run an enormous race in this Riesling. The $17 was crazy. I think she's like 9. You might get better around. And Castagne's obviously a really solid horse. Two Darn Lizzie's going to tackle this race. What is she going to be? So she's had 2 trials since she won on the 13th of the 1st over 1,000. So she's got to go 1,000 to 1,200 with 2 trials in between. I haven't watched this trial. She's back in the outside there in the pink. So I don't love it when horses of gaze aren't showing, you know, really good natural speed, especially in trials. And I can see that she's been restrained here and ridden off. They do run fastish time, but yeah, and she's run home okay. Certainly not a negative. You know, it doesn't look like she's cooked or anything like that, but I'm not really keen to take $3.50 off that sort of preparation. Erno's Cube ran behind Straight Charge Espionage in that controlled tempo. A 42-day break now has to go 1,200, which it's run well. It's probably the horse that's the one to beat, maybe, if you're nitpicking, but, you know, 5th, 6th run with gaps between runs. It's a horse I'm not too scared to bet against or to take on, and it did have that right run the other day and went okay, but I don't think it's got much upside. Extreme Diva is going to have to back up off that run if it runs, and I couldn't find anything super strong behind. So sort of Silmarillion obviously was much keener when it was, you know, $17, $15, whatever it was on an each way basis, but I think she's the one in the Riesling that can give the better fancied horses a huge run for its money. You were on Silmarillion? Yeah, I think we were covering it. Oh, were we not? I'm not sure. I think we were. Can't remember if I was on or not. Maybe it was the week before, but yeah, ran really well. I think you did, and you think you tipped in it $5 a place, something like that. I think we talked about it, but yeah, it's a very nice horse. Codman Stakes, I think Straight Charge is going to be extraordinarily hard to beat. Yeah, draws are obviously going to be important, not so much for it, but for the other runners to see whether they're going to land. And I think, you know, that he'll show his dominance over horses like Switzerland, Shangri-La Express, Bodyguard, all those horses. I think these two horses will stand up, and I think Straight Charges. Well, I think it should be favourite for the Slipper or close enough to it. Much closer in betting to Storm Boy, and Espionage not far behind. So I think these two horses get their chance to show that on the weekend. Switzerland's the one that's probably going to have to continue to step up. I think Shangri-La's not up to this level. He'll surprise me if he is. And then, this is Gatsby's we were just talking about there. It's an interesting horse, but it's just a huge step up and coming off such a hard run too on debut on that sort of wet track, whereas Cimmerillion was back out the back and didn't have to work hard and sort of just got to run home comfortably. This horse had to do all the work, do all the chasing. So I think it's probably, bigger chance of having been gassed than Silmarillion. I think this is a super strong race. So we're talking about horses that can measure up in the Slipper, whereas the Riesling looks a bit weaker. That's about it. Black Opal, it's just, you've got to know what horses are going to these races. It's just a bit of a nightmare. I'm not a huge fully lit fan, very fast horse, not a huge Node fan, King of Rousseau. I just worry about that when they come out. I'm not even showing the prices. That's probably a good effort. Sorry, we're showing the prices of that the Todman. Got to remember to swap the screens. Yeah, so Espionage Straight Charge 350. I don't think there's huge value there, but I think it's justified. And once we see the draws, it'll be interesting to see what betting does. It's so funny now, as we were sort of talking about it earlier. Once upon a time, you had to take the gamble to chime into all-in betting because there was value in it. Now you often find that these prices open up longer, even if they all accept and draw where they should and everything like that. It's just pretty crazy. So, you've got to demand good value in these early betting markets, and I think it's just a bit more of an early preview looking at these races. I didn't find anything that was, super overs or anything like that, any big mistakes this week. So that's it for this week. I might try on Friday. Because there's no Friday racing, Friday night racing, there's a double header of Dubbo and Newcastle. So you got Newcastle Stakes Day and just a regular meeting at Dubbo, and I might chime in and do maybe half the card, something like that there. You want me to look at Wymark before I go? Do we have an email I can send my tips to? I don't. Sorry, I don't have email. I'll have to get up to it one of these days. I'm illiterate. No, I do have an email, info@racingwatch.com.au. I might try and chime in with Dubbo on Friday, and we can do the bit of the previewing of the race and things like that. I know it's midday, like during the day is not probably ideal for most people on Fridays, but it was sort of interested me that Nick's stream, that he got quite a few people in there, watching during the day. So the reason why I want to do it is because that's sort of more my element, tackling sort of country and provincial racing, and hopefully can sort of demonstrate a few more betting angles and things like that on these races. I unfollowed you. I don't think I've ever unfollowed anyone in my life, so that's an interesting one. You must have sent something strange. Yeah, so the plan is probably to do that, is to at least tackle maybe half the card. I'll have a look at the meetings pre-race and come on when it looks like at least there's some solid betting opportunities. I might try and do that the next few Fridays and then sort of back up into the Saturday meeting with the Friday night's close. I think that's just because Canterbury's turned into a quarantine at the moment. But that's about it from me, and I'll see you Friday. Cheers, guys.
What are you prepared to lose today? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.